Hello everyone, this is Piyush. So as you all know that May 2024 is about to come, and whenever you have been preparing for the mains, you cannot focus on the whole syllabus. आपको अगर ये लगता है कि suppose modern India is a very important part and every year you see good number of questions coming from modern India, specifically I am talking about general studies, but it is equally applicable even to the optional paper also. So जब भी आप prepare करते हैं तो आप पूरे syllabus पे focus नहीं कर सकते हैं और आपको हमेशा कुछ ऐसे topics shortlist करने चाहिए जिन topics की probability बहुत ज़्यादा हो सकती है question में आने की. So अगर आप किसी topic पे focus करके prepare करते हैं तो in that case what happens, somehow you are having more enriched content to write the answer, but here you have to show your skill in order to identify those topics which may be asked in the exam. So we were just trying to help you out in this particular regard, and that's why I would be coming up with some such few topics on what the questions may be asked, and I believe that if the content is slightly less, in that case the content what I am providing to you, so you can basically take the help from here, correct? So the one topic what I find very important is the role of Indian diaspora in Indian freedom movement. Now the question is that what is this diaspora? Diaspora is basically about the people, those who have migrated from country, those who are living in some other regions much away from or far away from their country, though they are basically called as diaspora, right? So in Indian case, we can talk about some Indians, those who had been living outside. It may be Africa, it may be Europe, some of the countries of Europe, it may be America also, America, let's say Canada. So basically good number of Indians had been living in various parts of the world, and whenever it comes to Indian freedom movement, at that point of time they had been also trying to contribute in Indian freedom movement in their own ways, right? So basically this question may be asked, and earlier also long back they have asked one question, UPSC in general studies paper, that what role was being played by the foreigners in Indian freedom movement. So that's how this question may be asked also, right? So if this question is coming, in that case what content you need to write, that's the most important point, and we'll be just trying to focus on that particular topic, in this particular topic in such a way that you can write any answer if it is coming. One more thing, it is very much applicable to general studies, but it is equally applicable even to the optional paper also. That's why we'll be covering this particular topic in such a way that you can write any answer in both the formats whenever the question is coming. So as I told you that what is the meaning of diaspora. So in that case you have to discuss, if any as such question is coming, in that case you have to discuss basically the various organizations or the individuals which had been playing some important role in Indian freedom movement. So first of all we can talk about the Gadar party. As you all know that this is one of the most important contribution in Indian freedom movement from America, and further they had been coming to India. So this was basically an organization formed in 1913 in San Francisco, and it is precisely known for the newspaper which they had launched, that's called as Gadar, okay? Then it comes to Indian Home Rule Society in India and India House, that was formed, established by Shyamji Krishna Verma in London, and this institution provided a base for Indian revolutionaries and intellectuals. We will discuss their contributions also. Then the India House hosted many future leaders of Indian freedom movement, including V.D. Savarkar, because they had they had been sponsoring some of the revolutionaries. They were providing training to the revolutionaries of making bomb and for some other things, and this is their major contribution, okay? Then yes, another important organization was Indian National Army, that was formed by Mohan Singh and later by Subhash Chandra Bose, who was basically providing its leadership to INA. And as you all know that it does have a sort of great contribution in Indian freedom movement, because when they attacked on the British India from the northeastern side, and then the further episodes which took place, they are considered to be very important in case of Indian freedom movement. Apart from that also we can talk about various other people, or let's say individuals or maybe organizations, they had been playing some significant role in Indian freedom movement, such as North America, Europe, Asia, and from other regions they had been contributing, right? So this is how we can talk about the various contributions, okay? Now it comes to that what contributions they had been making. Ultimately if any as such question is coming, in that case you need to discuss about all these organizations, and then what contributions they had been making in Indian freedom movement. So for what points we are going to write, if any as such question is coming. So first of all, it's about the financial support. So the Indian diaspora provided significant financial support to Indian freedom movement from abroad basically. So since these people, those who had been living outside, some of them were very rich also, and that's how the wealthy Indians living abroad, particularly in United States, Canada and Europe, they contributed funds for Indian freedom movement, which of course they required. Okay, Ghadar Party is the best example for it, because if you have studied about Ghadar Party, in that case you all must be knowing that Ghadar Party has accumulated or collected huge amount of, they had been collecting funds like from people living in America in order to sponsor not only their movement but even the movements which were other movements which were taking place, right. The second important contribution is international advocacy. Now what is that? Now Indian issues were being raised internationally, right. So the international media, the international community, political communities precisely, whether they are aware of Indian issues or not, like there again these people have played, or these people or the organization had played very significant role. So basically they had started raising these issues these issues on various platforms, basically international platforms, right. So international platforms in Europe, then international platforms in America, and then they had been writing some articles, and that's how they were making the people aware of it. So this is another important contribution. The best example for this, we can talk about Madam Bhikaji Kama, who hoisted the Indian flag at the International Socialist Conference in Stuttgart in Germany 1907. So these kind of things or the incidents had been making the people in Europe aware of it. In the same way, we can talk about Lala Lajpat Rai, who traveled to Canada and the United States urging Indians to participate in Indian freedom struggle. So these are certain activities which had been basically raising Indian freedom movement issues in the international platform. The third, we can talk about the revolutionary activities. So I think you know about the Ghadar Party. So Ghadar Party was basically a revolutionary act, and as you all know that this party was formed in 1913, and they had been basically trying to mobilize people for a Ghadar. That is basically a sort of an armed rebellion. So that is the reason because of what there was great revolutionary support Indian freedom movement had been getting from outside. INA is the another best example for it, right. Okay, the next point is basically establishing supportive network and organization. So the Indian diaspora establishing numerous organizations that played crucial role in supporting the freedom movement. These organizations provided platforms in for Indian nationalists to plan and coordinate their activities. What are the best examples for it? Such as Shyamji Krishna Burma, he founded Indian Home Rule Society and India House in London, and that became one of the base or the platform for the revolutionary activities. I have already discussed that it had been sponsoring or it was giving scholarship to the people, those who wanted to fight for India, but then they have some sort of limitations of either money or let's say knowledge or skill. So they invited such people here in London, and they were providing various kind of trainings and other supports, and that's how they had been supporting the Indian freedom movement. So that's the best example. In the same way, we can talk about Lala Hardayal also. Lala Hardayal had played a very crucial role in the formation of Ghadar Party and mobilizing the people over there. Okay. Next point, we can talk about political and intellectual contributions, right. So basically when it comes to this contribution, that we can understand with respect to some of the literature they had been writing. So such as they, as I told you, that they had been writing various kind of literature or let's say newspaper, and in those newspapers and the literature they had been exposing the real character or the exploitation of the colonial rule, and this exploitation was enough to mobilize the people, Indian people living outside, and in fact the international community also. So the way I have already discussed about the awareness what they had been spreading here, so in that regard it is very important. श्यामजी कृष्ण वर्मा वो एक न्यूज़पेपर जो है वो एक पब्लिश करते थे, that's called as Indian Sociologist, right. And of course it disseminated revolutionary ideas. In the same way, like when it comes to Tarak Nath Das, he formed the Indian Independent League in California. Of course, we can talk about the Gadar newspaper also. So these are the intellectual contribution here that we can talk about. Okay. Next is creating propaganda and mobilization. So basically through their newspapers or writings or literature, they had been sort of creating or circulating a propaganda and the mobilization. So such as when it comes to Gadar. Now Gadar is very famous for including some of the things on the newspaper such as Angrezi Raj Ka Kacha Chitta, and then they are just by including a column on the newspaper, that too on the front page of the newspaper, they had been including some of the basic problems with the colonization and how come the colonial rule was exploiting India. That's being exposed by that. So that's in the same way we can talk about Madam Bhikaji Kama also. She published Bande Mataram in that was a magazine being published in Paris, and that was also doing something very similar. So that's how we can talk about this is another contribution. Okay, moving to the next is serving as a source of inspiration and leadership. So here we can talk about Mahatma Gandhi and Subhash Chandra Bose, those who had been living outside, and undoubtedly they have served, or they were the basically source of inspiration, because the way Mahatma Gandhi did a very successful movement in South Africa, and undoubtedly it became a source not only for India but even for the other countries which were colonized by some of the European countries, and that's how it was a sort of model being set by Mahatma Gandhi. जिस तरीके से सुभाष चंद्र बोस करते हैं कि उन्होंने आईएनए स्टैब्लिश किया और उन्होंने एक बड़ा ही रेवोल्यूशनरी आइडिया लेके आए कि हम इस तरीके से भी कॉलोनियल रूल को हरा सकते हैं. सो these are those people who had been setting up a new standard with respect to the colonization and the freedom of any particular country. Okay. Then we can talk about the educational influences. So basically the exposure to the Western education and the ideas among the Indian diaspora played a significant role in shaping the intellectual framework, since they had been accessing to a better education system, and that's how they were aware of the modern ideas. And these modern ideas, they further started circulating through basically various acts, like either by establishing some educational institutions, or else we can talk about through their literature or the newspaper. That's how we can say that this is a sort of very important contribution. हम यहाँ पे अम्बेडकर को quote कर सकते हैं जिन्होंने इस लाइन में बहुत कुछ किया. Okay, so these are certain specific contributions by them. And when you need to discuss about some key figures, right? So earlier we have discussed about the key organizations, and when it comes to the key figures, so there we can quote some important key figures such as Mahatma Gandhi. I have already discussed about him. Lala Hardayal, right? So Mahatma Gandhi के बारे में हमने बात की कि किस तरीके से साउथ अफ्रीका में हैं और वहाँ से फिर इंडिया आते हैं और फिर बहुत सारे मूवमेंट में पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं. लाला हरदयाल जो गदर पार्टी के फॉर्मेशन में उनका एक बड़ा सिग्निफिकेंट रोल रहा है. सो ही इज़ पार्ट ऑफ इट. देन वी कैन टॉक अबाउट सुभाष चंद्र बोस, द वे ही इज़ becoming part of INA, and then he is giving that famous slogan of Subhash Chandra Bose, Dilli Chalo. It is yet very popular. In the same way we can talk about Syamji Krishna Burma. Now this person was involved, he was basically involved in the formation of this India House and Indian Home Rule Society in London, and the various contributions he had been making. Madam Bhikaji Kama, she is also known for her contribution in Indian freedom movement, right? So these are certain important contributors in Indian freedom movement, and that too from that community of Indian diaspora, right? So if any as such question is coming, so in that way you can write the answer of this particular question. So we will come up with some more such important themes, and we'll try to discuss that if any such question is coming, in that case what are the points that you should include in the answer. If you want to download this particular notes, in that case this is the Telegram channel. From here you can download it, so you can find the PPT or maybe in the PDF format. Thank you very much.